Hello, my name is Chrissie Hodges. I'm an advocate for OCD, and I'm also a certified peer support specialist, working with people worldwide, providing referrals and also support as they work toward recovery. I also run groups, and I have an online community for peer support and connection. I'm also the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. I wanted to come on here. NOCD asked if I would share some parts of my story. So in this video in particular, I want to talk about what OCD was like when it first showed up for me. OCD started when I was 8 years old, out of the blue. I was a normal everyday child. I'm about to age myself, but I played Atari, rode bikes, normal social kid. And all of a sudden, everything changed for me in one day. I was in my classroom and someone got sick. They threw up in the classroom. Now, this had happened before. I had gotten sick, family members had gotten sick, and I'd never had this sort of reaction, but I panicked. It happened right next to me in the classroom, and I jumped out of my seat and landed on the floor and was just having a full-on anxiety attack, not understanding at all what was going on with me, being 8 years old. And I saw people starting to snicker and laugh at me, and I thought, I've got to get out of this quick. So I did this breathing ritual to try to calm everything down, and I was able to get up, and the teacher took me back to the back of the classroom, and that's when religious scrupulosity hit. I was an 8-year-old in the South. My dad is a retired Southern minister, so religion was just about all I knew as far as a worldview. So in my little mind, I thought I must have done something bad to deserve to feel this way. And so I started doing religious compulsions, praying, searching, mentally reviewing what I must have done wrong to deserve this, that I needed to ask repentance for. And compulsions became my entire life after that. That day I went home. I did not tell my parents. First of all, I didn't think that even as an 8-year-old, I knew that I probably wouldn't get taken seriously, or, wouldn't get the help I probably needed, even though I didn't know if I needed help or not. But I also thought, I'm just hoping this is a bad day and that I'll wake up tomorrow and this will all be gone, which is what we think about a lot of things when it comes to OCD. And I woke up the next morning and it was worse. It hit me in the face like a ton of bricks, and I had to go to school. I tried to fake getting out of school because I was so scared. But I had to go, and every day from then on out became compulsions of a religious nature. So prayer, repentance, and then, of course I was doing all kinds of body reviewing for the fear of throwing up. And my life became all about, first of all, the fear of the vomiting and the fear that I'm being punished by God for doing something wrong, but also hiding this from everybody at 8 years old. That continued into my teenage years. I never told a soul. And then I started to have very disturbing intrusive thoughts. So I would have intrusive thoughts of harm to kids, harm to family, sexual intrusive thoughts, and demon possession, things like that. The religious scrupulosity always stayed on kind of overarching everything. And then when I was 14, that's when sexual orientation and OCD hit. And that was very debilitating. I was staying with a friend and she started talking about sex. And of course, I thought talking about sex at 14 was a sin, even though I was, a teenage girl that had all these curiosity and hormones raging and I was boy crazy and everything else. I still thought, I can't talk about this or I'm going to get punished by God. Well, that evening, I stayed over at her house and I went into my room to go to bed, and I started thinking about sex, and I was like, why does everybody else get to do whatever they want and I can't? And it's almost like I had some insight, and then OCD was like, nope. And I had this mental picture of her and her boyfriend having sex, and I was like, oh, I can't do that. That's awful to think about her boyfriend naked. And then all of a sudden, all that remained was her naked. And I was like, oh my gosh, stop thinking about that. Oh God, why am I thinking about that? And of course my brain then said, well, maybe you want to think about her because you're gay. And I remember it was like someone lit my brain on fire. I fell to my knees on the ground and I was like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? And then I went, wait a minute, this feels a lot like the fear that I have with vomiting. And before I could think rationally of like, hey, maybe the two are connected and you should get some help, my brain then went, this must be God's new way of punishing you. Not by, homosexuality thoughts or anything, but just, I must have done something wrong. And now instead of the fear of vomit, now it's the fear that I don't know my sexual orientation. And that made me feel terrible. Oh my gosh, like what did I do to offend God and why? So I started mentally reviewing and praying and all of that. And that changed my life. The next morning, same thing. I woke up hoping it would be gone, and it was worse. And it felt like I was losing my whole life. I mean, am I somebody different than I thought? Do I want things different than I thought I did? Is this how things change? And so I was scared, but I didn't tell anybody again. For the next 5-6 years, I held on to this secret like I had a double life. I mean, everybody at school, high school and college, knew me as just this outgoing. I was involved in everything. I had straight A's. I was popular among my peers. I was in clubs. In college, I was in a sorority. I ran cross country. All of this was this facade to hide what was going on inside of me. And I felt so alone and disconnected. I was like, everybody thinks I'm this person. Nobody knows who I really am inside. And I didn't even know who I really was. Sometimes it would ebb and flow and the thoughts wouldn't be there. And I'd be like, okay, we're all cool. And then it would come back and I would experience depression, and I didn't know it was depression, but I knew that I was scared and stuck, and I would be behind this haze and doom of life of what if this never goes away? What am I going to do? When I was 20, my cousin died. It was a big, big loss and grief for me. He was one of my best friends, and he drowned in a boating accident or a boating incident. And that grief, while holding up this major mental illness that I didn't know I had and no one knew that I was struggling with, it took me down. It was too much to bear. So it was about 6 months after he died that I spiraled to my worst. I was depressed every single day. I was having thoughts of suicide all the time. And I didn't know how to talk to anybody about that. I was so scared if I said anything about it out loud, that meant it would be true, or people wouldn't believe that this wasn't something that I wanted, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And on Christmas break, I was going home and I had 6 weeks and I was so depressed. And it got so bad that I tried everything in every way, bargaining with God, because of the religious scrupulosity. I'll do anything. Just please let it break. Please I'll be the best person I could ever be. I'll never do anything wrong, and it just didn't work because that's not how clinical depression works. And that's where I was at. So I attempted suicide when I was 20 over Christmas break. I won't go into the details of that. Feel free to read my memoir. I talk all about the whole process of how this happened. And I was hospitalized. I did survive, and I was hospitalized. And then that's where I was diagnosed with OCD in a hospital in 1997 in Atlanta. And the therapist was like, this sounds like OCD, although I've never seen anything before like it. So that was a relief that it wasn't my fault. But it also brought up a plethora of emotions, including anger. And I'll talk about that in my next video, but including feeling like I don't even know who I am. I was grateful that this had a name and that we could go from there, but I was very angry that I had been kind of a slave to that for so long. I went back to school after all of that, the next quarter, pretended like everything was fine, again, created a facade. No one knew what had happened to me. I didn't tell anybody. So here I was living a double life again, hiding the secret from people and feeling again really disconnected, which again, I will discuss later. But I relapsed about a year later. I stopped taking medication and it was working for me, and thinking I could outthink it. And I crashed and burned. Was suicidal again. And luckily we had AOL dial-up at that point, and I found Dr. Stephen Phillipson's website, AOL Zone, or OCD Zone at AOL. And I reached out to him, and he agreed to do phone sessions with me and I was scared. There was no information about OCD or ERP out there, but I just trusted this man. I trusted this voice on the phone every week. And I was very successful in getting effective treatment for OCD with Dr. Stephen Phillipson back then. And in, the time during therapy when I was finished, that theme really was eradicated for me. I went from 24/7 groinal syndrome, misery, depression, thinking, behind the haze, I'll never get out of this, to having effective ERP. And it gave me, I want to say, my life back, but I never had my life to begin with. I don't think OCD had control of most of it, but it gave me the chance at having a life. And then after that, I did go on to do some great things and start making some decisions for myself. But that's when I really needed to grieve this. I really needed to come to terms with the emotional recovery of what I had been through. And I will discuss that in my next video. But I do want to say that I understand just how bad OCD gets. And I was in it for years and years and years with no information whatsoever. I know how lonely it gets. I know how isolating it gets. But you are not alone. And this is the one reason why I do videos on YouTube. So when you feel alone, you can go and listen to those videos and you'll see me and hear me say this. You do not have to walk through this by yourself. And keep fighting. Keep fighting every single day to learn how to manage this, because you deserve it.